The grand ballroom of the Lexington Hotel shimmered with golden light. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above tables, dressed in white silk, and decorated with roses so fresh they still held morning dew. A string quartet played softly, near the corner, the melody blending with the gentle hum of elite conversation. It was a charity gala, one of the biggest of the year, and every seat was reserved for the rich, the powerful, or the well-connected. But despite the wealth and shine, one man stood out, not because he was out of place, but because everything about him said he belonged at the top. Carter Langston, billionaire, CEO, a name that echoed in Forbes and Fortune headlines. He didn't wear his power loudly. His suit was simple, his watch understated, but people noticed. They always did. The only thing louder than his reputation was the silence around the one thing he rarely spoke of: his son. Seated beside him, eyes filled with curiosity and wonder, was 7-year-old Jamie Langston. Jamie had cerebral palsy. He didn't speak much, and his body often didn't obey him the way other kids did. His limbs were stiff and his legs weak, but his mind was brilliant. Carter had poured millions into treatments and private care, flown in doctors from around the world, but there was still a wall between them, a wall of silence, of unspoken emotions, of things money couldn't fix. The gala had been Carter's idea to show Jamie the world, to bring him into the spaces Carter ruled. But he hadn't expected to feel so helpless, so removed. Everyone spoke to him, but few even looked at his son. Jamie sat in his wheelchair quietly, watching the dancers on the floor twirl, laugh, and lose themselves in the rhythm. His fingers tapped against the chair's armrest, mimicking the beat, his eyes lighting up with something Carter hadn't seen in a long time. Then she appeared. She didn't glide like the rest. She rushed between tables with a tray in hand, hair tucked into a messy bun, her shoes worn at the heels. Her name tag read Talia, and she wasn't part of the show. She was a waitress, a young black woman, probably not older than 22. No one noticed her except to wave for champagne or ask for another fork. But Jamie noticed her. He watched her like she was the only person in the room who wasn't pretending. And then, in a moment so small it could have gone unnoticed, their eyes met. Talia saw Jamie smile, a quiet, uncertain smile that barely made it to his lips. She smiled, paused in her tracks, and gave a little wave. Jamie's fingers twitched. Carter saw it too. He leaned forward, curious. Then, without hesitation, Talia did something that made Carter sit up straighter. She placed her tray on the nearest table, walked right over to Jamie, and knelt beside him. "Hey, little man," she said gently. "You like music?" Jamie blinked and nodded. Talia grinned. "You want to dance?" Carter's breath caught in his throat. Was she serious? Jamie couldn't even stand without assistance. Carter opened his mouth to intervene, but something in Jamie's face stopped him. His son was beaming, really beaming. And before Carter could say a word, Talia extended her hand. "Tell you what," she whispered. "You lead, I'll follow." Jamie hesitated, then reached out with a trembling hand. Talia held it firmly, warmly. Slowly, she began to sway, just a little. Jamie giggled. The giggle turned into a full laugh as she followed the motion of his arm, spinning in a circle like he was the one guiding her. The room didn't notice. It was too busy clinking glasses and flashing cameras. But Carter noticed. His heart, shielded for so long by power and pride, cracked open in a way he hadn't felt in years. He watched as his son danced for the first time. Talia didn't know who he was. She didn't care. She didn't see a billionaire or a business empire. She saw a boy who wanted to feel normal, wanted to be part of the music, even if just for a moment. And she gave him that. When the song ended, she gently bowed to Jamie and said, "You're a great dancer, you know that?" Jamie gave a shy nod. His hand wouldn't let go of hers. Something shifted inside Carter then, something deep and long buried. He stood, approached them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, knelt beside his son and looked into his eyes. Jamie looked back, glowing. "Thank you," Carter said to Talia, his voice quieter than usual. She smiled. "Any time," and just like that she turned and returned to her tray. But that moment, it stayed. Carter spent the rest of the night watching her. Not in a strange way, but with a curiosity that puzzled even him. Who was this girl? Where did she come from? How did she see what no one else saw? As the ballroom cleared and the night wound down, Carter found himself asking questions he hadn't asked in years. About connection, about kindness, about how a billionaire could be so powerful yet feel so powerless, until a waitress gave his son a moment of joy. He couldn't stop thinking about her. And while Carter was caught in this moment of deep reflection, somewhere across town, another story was quietly unfolding, a story just as powerful. On a crowded city bus, a black teen in a hoodie stood up and offered his seat to a pregnant white woman. A simple act, one people might glance at, then forget. But the woman didn't forget. As she sat down, winded and grateful, she reached into her purse, scribbled a note, and handed it to the boy. "Open it later," she whispered. What the note said would send ripples through his entire life. But for now, in that grand ballroom, Carter stood in silence, holding Jamie's hand. He watched the doors where Talia had walked out, already determined to find her again. He didn't know how or why, but something told him that girl had just changed everything. And he was right. Because in the days that followed, a chain of events would unravel. One connecting a billionaire, a waitress, and a young man on a bus. 3 lives, 3 small acts, and one truth that would tie them all together. Kindness is louder than power. But the question now was, would the world listen? And just as Carter stepped out into the cold night air, phone in hand ready to call in favors, his phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, almost, but something told him to answer. He did, and what he heard on the other end would leave him frozen on the hotel steps, heart pounding, unable to speak, because the past wasn't finished with him yet, and neither was fate. Carter stood there for a few seconds, phone pressed to his ear, lips parted but silent. The voice on the other end was calm, polite even, but what it said hit him like a thunderclap. The words didn't make sense, not at first. It was about Talia, the waitress, the girl who danced with Jamie. But how did someone already know she'd caught his attention? The voice gave a name, a time, a place, and then the call ended. No explanation, no chance to ask questions. Carter looked down at Jamie, who was still humming softly, lost in his memory of the dance. That one moment of joy seemed to have lifted something heavy from his small shoulders. Carter had never seen his son like that. Not with therapists, not with teachers, not even with him. His fingers tightened around the phone. Something was going on. He could feel it in his gut. A billionaire like him had learned to trust instincts, especially the kind that whispered when something didn't add up. And this didn't. Who was this girl, really? Just a waitress or something more? He didn't sleep that night. Instead, Carter sat at his home office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass, staring out into the night sky while files opened on his screen. He had resources. Entire teams dedicated to research, to finding people, to gathering background checks within minutes. But when it came to Talia, everything was strange. No social media, no LinkedIn, no college record. Only a few fragments, a high school yearbook, photo, a part-time job at a community center, and an address that led to a housing project in a rough part of town. That was it. She was practically invisible in a world where everyone left digital footprints. But that wasn't the strangest part. It was her connection to someone else Carter had almost forgotten. Years ago, before Jamie was born, Carter's company had funded a mentorship program in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. It had been a good press move, a tax write-off, and something his late wife had pushed for. She had believed in lifting people up, in second chances. Carter had nodded along at the time, but his heart hadn't been in it. Now, buried in one of those old reports, he saw her name, Talia Jennings, age 15, orphaned, raised by her grandmother, one of the students in the very first mentorship cycle. And next to her file was a note, written in his wife's elegant handwriting. Bright, brave, quiet leader. Watch this one. Carter leaned back in his chair, the breath leaving his chest, slowly. His wife had seen something in her all those years ago. And now, all this time later, Talia had crossed their path again, this time reaching Jamie in a way no one else ever had. Coincidence? Or something more? Meanwhile, across the city, Talia sat in a small, dimly lit kitchen, stirring soup on the stove. Her uniform was draped over a chair. Her feet ached, and her body felt like it had been through a marathon. But her mind was still dancing. Jamie's smile kept flashing in her head, the way his fingers had clung to hers, the way he had laughed. She didn't know his name. Didn't know the man in the sharp suit was one of the richest people in the country. She hadn't cared. All she saw was a little boy who needed to feel seen. Talia's grandmother, Miss Laverne, sat in a recliner in the corner, wrapped in a blanket, her hands trembling slightly as she worked a crossword puzzle. "Long night, baby?" she asked without looking up. Talia nodded. "Yeah, but it was good. I met someone." Miss Laverne smiled softly. "A man?" Talia chuckled. "No, a kid. Sweetest little boy. He couldn't walk well, but he danced with me." The old woman looked up then, her eyes gentle but curious. "Sounds like he left an impression." Talia nodded again, slower this time. "Yeah, he did." She didn't say more, but something inside her felt different. Like that small moment with Jamie had opened a part of her she hadn't realized had gone quiet. At that same hour, on the other side of town, another story was unfolding. The black teen on the bus. His name was Marcus. He was 17, tall, soft-spoken, and always kept his head down. He didn't make noise, didn't draw attention. That day, he had just been trying to get home from work. He stocked shelves at a local grocery store, saving every dollar he could to help his mom, who worked 2 jobs and still came home exhausted every night. When the pregnant woman got on the bus, breathing heavily, no one moved. The seats were full. Most riders kept their eyes on their phones or out the window. But Marcus stood, no hesitation, and offered his seat. She had thanked him, twice, and then, before getting off, handed him a folded piece of paper. He hadn't opened it right away. Now, sitting on his worn-out bed in their tiny apartment, he unfolded the note. It read, "You don't know me, but I know exactly who you are. You were meant to stand up today for more than just a seat. Be at 164 Park Avenue tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ask for Sarah." No signature, no explanation. He stared at the note for a long time. His heart thumped louder with every minute. He looked at the clock, then the ceiling, then the small photo on his nightstand, him and his mother smiling. Something about that message felt serious, but also hopeful. He didn't tell his mom. She had too much to worry about already. Instead, he placed the note carefully under his pillow and lay back, eyes wide open, wondering what he had just walked into. Back in Carter's world, the next morning came with more questions than answers. His assistant had just arrived when he placed the file on her desk. "Find her," he said. "Talia Jennings, discreetly. I want to know everything." His assistant blinked. "She's the waitress from last night?" "Yes, but she's more than that." Carter didn't explain. He wasn't even sure how to. Meanwhile, Jamie sat in his therapy session with a different spark in his eyes. The therapist noticed immediately. "What's different today, Jamie?" she asked kindly. Jamie smiled and tapped twice on the picture of a music note on his speech device. "Dance," the device said. The therapist tilted her head. "Dance. You want to dance?" Jamie nodded. His fingers tapped again, this time more slowly. "Girl, danced with me." That was the moment she called Carter in, eyes wide with surprise. He's communicating more clearly than he ever has, she said. Something happened. Carter knelt in front of Jamie, looking into his son's bright, animated eyes. "Was it her?" he whispered. Jamie smiled. But before Carter could say another word, his phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. He answered quickly this time, already standing. "Mr. Langston," the voice said, "if you're still curious about the waitress, meet me at the old pier tonight. Bring no one, come alone." Click no name, no reason, but Carter was already reaching for his coat. He had no idea that everything was about to change again, and that this wasn't just about a dance, it was about something much, much bigger. The wind at the old pier was sharp that night, carrying the smell of salt and rust from the water. Carter stood there alone, his collar turned up against the breeze, the light from his car a small glow behind him. The planks beneath his feet creaked with every shift of weight. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the skin on his arms tighten. He checked his watch again. 20 minutes past the time the voice had told him. Still nothing. No call, no figure walking toward him. Just the waves lapping at the edge and the occasional clang of loose metal. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. From the shadows a man emerged. Middle-aged, wore a hood, but his face was exposed. Lines creased around his eyes, but there was something familiar about him. Carter couldn't place it, but it tugged at something buried deep in memory. "You came," the man said. "You're the one who called me?" The man nodded. "Yes, I've been waiting for the right moment to talk to you. And last night, that was the moment," Carter frowned. "This is about the waitress? It's about more than her. It's about your son, and about a choice you made 10 years ago that's catching up to you." Carter felt a chill run through him that had nothing to do with the cold air. What choice? But the man didn't answer directly. He pulled a small envelope from his coat and held it out. "Read this, then we talk again. Tomorrow, same place, midnight." And just like that, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Carter staring at the envelope in his hands. Across town, Talia stood in front of a dusty storage unit. She hadn't been here in years, not since her grandmother had packed away the last of her mother's things. But something about last night had stirred up old feelings, memories of a childhood filled with quiet strength and soft music. Her mother had loved dancing, had taught her the rhythm of life through movement, even when things were falling apart. As she unlocked the rusted door, a wave of dust and the faint scent of lavender hit her. There were boxes stacked neatly, and on the top, an old record player. She ran her fingers across it, then found the box marked letters. Inside, she pulled out a bundle tied with a faded ribbon. Letters from her mother to her grandmother, to her future self, and to someone named Elena Langston. The name hit her like a jolt. Carter Langston's wife. What was her mother doing writing to Elena Langston? She sat on the concrete floor, heart pounding, and started reading. The first letter was dated nearly 20 years ago. It spoke of struggle, but also gratitude. It spoke of a donation that saved their home, of mentorship that changed a life, and of a friendship between two women from different worlds, one wealthy and grieving, the other poor but full of hope. The deeper Talia read, the more she realized there was a story hidden here, a connection between their families she'd never known. And now her dance with Jamie wasn't just chance. It was something bigger, something rooted in the past. At the same time, Marcus stood in front of a tall, steel-glass building on Park Avenue. The note had led him here. He wore his best jeans, a clean shirt, and the one pair of sneakers that still looked new. Inside, the receptionist asked no questions, just nodded and told him to wait. Minutes later, a woman walked out, mid-40s, white, sharp features but a warm smile. "Marcus, I'm Sarah, come with me." He followed her through a hallway that opened into a wide office filled with photographs, portraits of students, community leaders, city events. She gestured to a chair. "You're probably wondering why you're here," she said. He nodded. "Yeah, a little." Sarah leaned back. Years ago, a woman started a foundation called Second Steps. It helped teens like you, smart, quiet, full of potential but overlooked. That woman passed away. But before she did, she created a list of names, people to look out for. "You were on that list, Marcus." He blinked, stunned. "How? I don't even know her." Sarah smiled gently. You didn't need to. Someone saw you once. Someone who believed in what you could become. And now, it's your turn to decide what that means." He didn't say anything, but the walls around his heart shifted a little. Something big was happening. He could feel it. Back at his estate, Carter sat in his study, the envelope from the pier still unopened. He finally broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. "You don't remember me, but I remember you. You walked away from a deal that cost more than money. A woman lost her life. A child was left without a mother. And you moved on." But she didn't. She wrote to your wife, told her the truth, told her everything. And now that truth is reaching back for you. No signature, no name, but the words punched him in the chest. He thought back to a development deal years ago. A block of low-income housing cleared for corporate expansion. He remembered signing off on it. His team had said the residents would be relocated. He never looked deeper, never questioned it. He had no idea it had cost a life. Was it Talia's mother? Was that what this was all leading to? He picked up the letter again, his hands trembling slightly. And for the first time in a long time, Carter Langston felt like a man who didn't have all the answers. Meanwhile, Talia sat with her grandmother, the letters spread across the table. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked. Miss Laverne's eyes were misty. "You were just a child. I didn't want the pain to follow you. But maybe it's time you knew who your mother really was, and what she gave up." Talia looked down at the last letter in the box. It was addressed to Carter Langston, unopened, unsent. She picked it up slowly, unsure what she would find inside, but somehow knowing it would change everything. Carter couldn't sleep that night. He paced across his study floor, the letter still sitting on the edge of his desk, like it had weight beyond its paper. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the waitress, Talia. And behind her, glimpses of a woman from long ago, a woman he barely remembered. A mother holding her child outside a building that would soon be bulldozed to make way for a glass tower bearing his name. The more he tried to forget, the clearer. Her face became, not angry, not pleading, just tired, and alone. His phone buzzed. A message, unknown number, just one line. "You ignored the letter once, you don't get to ignore it again." He stood frozen. Then, without thinking, he grabbed his coat, the letter, and his keys. There was only one place to go now. Across town, Talia walked slowly through the lobby of the Langston Center for Youth and Innovation. She hadn't meant to come here, but her feet brought her anyway. There were photos on the wall of young people smiling, holding certificates, shaking hands with officials. She moved past them until she found the dedication plaque. Her eyes locked on one line etched in gold. "In honor of Elena Langston. Ice, woman who believed everyone deserved a second chance." Something twisted in her chest. Was this the same Elena who had written to her mother? The same woman her mother had trusted with secrets she'd never shared with her own daughter? And if so, what had Elena tried to make right before she died? Talia's thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "You shouldn't be here this late." She turned. A security guard, polite but firm. I used to work here," she said, her voice faltering a bit. The guard hesitated, then nodded. "All right, just 5 minutes, okay?" She gave a faint smile and nodded, but she didn't move toward the exit. Instead, she slipped into the conference room down the hall, pulled the unsent letter from her bag, and laid it on the table. Her mother's handwriting stared back at her. "To Mr. Carter Langston. You won't remember me, but I remember you. I remember when your men came with clipboards and cranes. I remember how no one listened when we said we had nowhere to go. But I don't write this to accuse you. I write this because your wife listened when no one else would. She came back after the dust settled. She brought blankets, food. She helped my daughter dance again after she stopped smiling. She gave me hope that maybe not all of you were the same." Talia's eyes filled with tears. She read on. "I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect change. But if you ever wonder whether your name could be more than just a brand, Remember the child with the bruised knees and the red shoes. She still dances, because someone cared when it mattered. Talia sat back, breath caught in her chest. The words felt heavier than anything she had carried. At that same moment, Marcus stood in a small community kitchen on the south side. He was stirring a pot of chili, sleeves rolled up, listening to kids laugh and argue over a board game behind him. He had no idea who paid for the new stove or stocked the pantry, but Sarah had told him, "It's part of your new beginning." Funded quietly by someone who once looked the other way, but might be trying to change that. He didn't know how he felt about that yet. He only knew that earlier today, Talia had found him after his shift, told him everything. About her, mother, the letters, the foundation, and the Langstons. He hadn't said much, but he listened, because deep down he was starting to believe this wasn't all just coincidence. Then the door opened. Carter stepped in, his presence making the small room go still. Marcus turned around, ladle in hand, surprised but not startled. Carter looked at him, not like a billionaire addressing a worker, but like a man who had a question he didn't know how to ask. "Can we talk?" he said quietly. Marcus set the pot aside, nodded. The two of them walked out to the alley behind the center, under a flickering light. "I don't know what your connection is to her," Carter said, "but I need to understand something. That night, at the gala, the dance, was it planned?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Jamie reached out. She followed his lead. Carter blinked. "He hasn't led a step in years. He doesn't trust strangers." "She wasn't a stranger," Marcus said. "Not to him, not to any of us. She's one of us." Carter's eyes dropped. I think I might owe her more than I can ever repay." Marcus didn't respond. He let the silence say what words couldn't. Back at the old pier, midnight came again. Carter was there, just like before. The hooded man returned, this time with no envelope, just eyes that watched him with something close to pity. "You opened it," the man said. "I did. And now you know what was buried." "What your wife tried to fix before the cancer took her?" Carter nodded. "But it's not enough to know. I have to make it right." The man looked at him closely. "Do you even know what right looks like?" Carter didn't answer, because he wasn't sure. Then the man stepped forward, close enough that Carter could see the scar above his brow. "You gave me 3 minutes to get out of my apartment before the bulldozer came," he said. "That was 10 years ago. My daughter still has nightmares about the dust and the noise." Carter's breath caught. "I didn't know. You didn't ask," the man said coldly. "But I'm giving you one chance. Fix what you broke. Not with donations, not with headlines. Fix it with the truth, and if you don't, the world's going to hear it anyway. We're not invisible anymore." With that, the man turned and walked away, his figure swallowed by the dark, and Carter was left standing at the edge of the dock, staring into the black water. Back in her apartment, Talia stood at the mirror, a dance audition notice in her hand. Jamie had been invited to a private performance next month, and they wanted her to choreograph it, with him. She smiled, just a little, but beneath it, a storm still brewed, because she knew the truth now. And soon, the world would too.